December 20th, 1906. I had a strange and illuminating conversation with my chief while waiting in the freezing weather outside of the Fifth Avenue home of where Mary Mallon works. It was our second attempt at trailing her, but she had not come out of the mansion, and I felt somehow it was below Mr. Soper's dignity to stand out in the cold for naught. So I said, "It's rather brisk for such a task, don't you think, sir?" His gaze on the house was quite intense, as if he could make her appear with his eyes. "I've been through far worse," he said. "I imagine you have," I said. "You lived through a war." A nervous pinch started in my stomach. I wasn't sure why I had brought up the war. Maybe the cold had numbed my fear, or maybe I thought there in the dark that it might be a good time to dare to question about my father. "The war, yes," he said. "We spent long days trying to find out what made those men ill." "Did you know any of the soldiers, personally?" I asked. I was hoping he might connect my father's name and mine and miraculously recall the short, curly-haired, olive-skinned man who belonged to me. "It was not a time for socializing," Mr. Soper said. He blew his breath onto his hands to keep warm. "I was too busy with my research and observation to really get to know the men," he said. A stab of disappointment lit the air from me. We stood in a silence and our eyes on the mansion. "It's interesting, when you think of war, how bacteria can also be used as a weapon," Mr. Soper said suddenly. "What do you mean?" I asked. "Well, for instance, during the Civil War, men from the South would send men from the North blankets." "A gesture of truce?" I asked, not understanding. "Quite the opposite," he said. "The blankets had been wrapped around men who had died from smallpox. They would spread the deadly disease to the enemies through those blankets." The story shook me, and it made me angry to think of the disease and bacteria and how dangerous those tiny organisms were to us. "Mr. Soper," I said, "I think I would understand this case much better if I could actually see what the typhoid bacteria looks like." I watched, even in the darkness, the muscles twitching in his jaw. I dared to add, "Through the microscope, I mean." "Perhaps," he said, "perhaps it would be a good idea for you to see them. Then you'd understand better how they pass from person to person." A rush of blood flowed through me, and he agreed to allow me to look in the microscope. "First thing tomorrow morning, I will put my eye in the bronzed lens and see what the world is made of." I shiver with the anticipation, with the promise of our undertaking. I can hardly sleep, imagining what it might be like to look at real bacteria. The things I will understand, the doors that will open to me. Oh, I cannot wait.